There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the familiar begins to crumble. The life you once recognized starts to shift. The people you depended on feel distant. The routines that brought you comfort now feel empty, and the ambitions that once drove you suddenly seem irrelevant. This unraveling can feel terrifying. But what if I told you that this is not a mistake, not a detour, but a deliberate act of the universe? What if, instead of punishing you, life is preparing you? We tend to equate stability with success, certainty with safety. But the psyche, much like nature, cannot remain in endless summer. Just as the forest must burn to birth fertile soil, so too must we go through inner seasons of collapse and release. The breakdown is not the end, it is the beginning of transformation. And only those who dare to endure it without running are able to cross into the next version of themselves. You see, the ego resists what the soul invites. The ego wants things to remain intact, predictable, linear, controllable. But the soul doesn't operate on those terms. It wants expansion. It wants truth. It wants evolution. And sometimes that evolution comes in the form of losing everything you thought was you. Perhaps right now, your life feels like it's falling apart. The job disappeared, the relationship ended, the path you were walking suddenly disappeared beneath your feet. The mind screams for answers, the heart aches for meaning. You feel abandoned by the very forces you once trusted. But let me offer a reframe. You are not being abandoned. You are being rearranged. The psyche knows when it is time to grow. It knows when the scaffolding you've built around your identity can no longer hold the weight of who you're becoming. And when that moment arrives, life doesn't ask politely. It rips the floor out from beneath you. Not to punish, but to free. Not to destroy, but to dissolve what is false. There is intelligence in the collapse. It is not chaos. It is reordering. It is the universe returning you to your original path, the one obscured by years of conditioning, societal expectation, and self-betrayal. Most people will avoid this process. They will numb it, bypass it, distract themselves from it. But if you can stay present, if you can endure the fire without fleeing, you will be reborn on the other side. This is the dark night of the soul, where the old dies not with violence, but with silence. You'll notice it not in loud endings, but in subtle apathy. The things that once stirred you no longer move you. You feel lost, not because you're broken, but because you're no longer confined by your previous identity. You've been emptied, so something sacred can take its place. During these moments, trust becomes your only lifeline. Not the blind trust of hope, but the grounded trust of inner knowing. A trust that says, if all of this is falling away, it must be because something deeper is trying to emerge. A new consciousness, a new calling, a new you. But you must let it happen. Stop trying to resurrect what has already served its purpose. Stop trying to go back to who you were before the storm. That version of you cannot come with you into the future that's calling you. Let it dissolve. Let it fall. Let the breakdown do its sacred work, because buried within the ashes of what you've lost is the seed of who you're meant to become. You don't need to rush it. You don't need to fix it. You only need to allow it. If the universe is dismantling your world, it is only because you outgrew it. When the psyche prepares for a fresh start, it doesn't do so with glitter and gold. It begins with undoing, with subtraction, with silence. It is a sacred deconstruction, and if you're standing in that space right now, where everything you thought you needed has been stripped away, then you are closer than ever to your rebirth. And that is not something to fear. That is something to bow to. There comes a time after the collapse, after the letting go, the falling apart, when everything becomes still. At first, you may welcome the silence, even find comfort in it. But slowly, unease creeps in. The momentum you once had disappears. Opportunities vanish. You're no longer running, no longer building, no longer chasing. And while part of you craves rest, another part begins to panic. Because in this silence, the mind starts to scream. Why is nothing happening? Why am I stuck? Has life forgotten me? But the truth is far more profound than the mind can understand. This stillness, this liminal space between what was and what's yet to be, is not a punishment. It is not a delay in the negative sense. It is a sacred pause, a divine recalibration. The universe is not ignoring you, it is preparing you. When the caterpillar enters the cocoon, it does not grow wings overnight. It must dissolve. And in that darkness, in that pause from movement, something extraordinary begins to form. But from the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. That's how the soul transforms. Quietly, invisibly, in places no one else can see, including you. This period, where everything feels suspended, where plans don't unfold and the future refuses to reveal itself, is deeply intelligent. The soul doesn't rush, and the universe never operates on the timelines the ego clings to. You're not being delayed, you're being aligned. Perfectly, precisely, purposefully. But alignment takes time, and it requires trust. When we speak of fresh starts, we imagine them arriving with clarity and momentum, as if the moment we let go of the old, the new should appear with certainty. But real transformation doesn't unfold like that. The space between endings and beginnings is where the most important work is done. And it's almost always invisible. You're being emptied for a reason. Not because there's nothing ahead of you, but because what lies ahead requires a different version of you. One that is quieter. One that is more in tune. One that is not rushing to fix, control, or manipulate, but is able to listen deeply, not just to the external world, but to the stirrings of your own inner voice. Because that voice is where the guidance lies. The ego hates this pause. It wants action, results, forward motion. It believes something is wrong if you're not constantly achieving. But the psyche knows better. It knows that you must become still long enough to hear the whisper of what's next. And that whisper won't arrive if you're too busy shouting for answers. This silence is not empty. It's full. Full of intelligence, full of codes, full of possibilities waiting to unfold when the timing is right. Your only task is to stay open, to resist the urge to fill the void with noise or distractions, to allow the unknown to do its quiet, transformative work. If you feel like nothing is moving, consider this. Maybe it's not meant to move right now. Maybe you're not being asked to go forward but inward. Maybe the path is not ahead of you but beneath your feet, quietly forming while you learn to trust yourself again. This sacred pause is a gift, because within it, you are stripped of the outer world long enough to finally hear your soul's desires. Desires that were drowned out by other people's opinions. Desires that got buried under ambition and obligation. Now, in the stillness, they return. Softly, honestly, let yourself listen. Let yourself rest. Let yourself be nothing for a while, because in that nothingness, you will begin to sense something ancient stirring, a memory of who you were before the world told you who to be, a vision of what life could look like when lived from that truth. But you can't access that clarity through force. You can only receive it by surrendering, and yes, it will feel like a death. A death of your pace, a death of your plans, but only because you're being readied for resurrection. The universe is not late, it is wise. It pauses because it must. Because every real beginning needs an incubation period, a void, a moment where all you can do is breathe and trust that what's ahead is not just coming, but already forming. There is no shame in waiting. There is no failure in rest. If your life has slowed to a stop, if the doors have closed and the signs have gone silent, consider that it may be the exact space you need to be in, because something is preparing to open in you. Not just for you. Let the silence teach you. Let the pause purify you. Let time do what it's always done when left alone, unfold things with divine precision. And when it's ready, you won't have to force the next step. It will call you. And when it does, you will answer it not with desperation, but with quiet power. There is a strange kind of loneliness that arrives just before the breakthrough. It's not the kind of loneliness that comes from being without people. No, this one runs deeper. It's a loneliness that emerges even when you're surrounded by others. A quiet sense of separation that can't be explained logically. It arrives when you've outgrown the life you knew, but haven't yet stepped into the one that's waiting for you. And in that space, you feel suspended, disconnected not just from the world, but sometimes even from yourself. But this loneliness is not meaningless. It is not a mistake. It is a necessary part of the journey. Because before the soul can rise, it must return to itself. And that return often requires being pulled away from everything that once defined you. People you loved may fade away. Conversations that once sparked joy may now feel hollow. The places you used to feel at home in suddenly become foreign. And in that shift, in that slow untangling from the familiar, you are left to face yourself. This is not a punishment. It's an initiation. The psyche cannot evolve while clinging to the safety of outer connection. It needs space. It needs silence. It needs solitude. Because it is only in solitude that the illusions begin to fall away. The masks drop. The roles lose their power. And what remains is raw, unfiltered truth. That truth, for many, is uncomfortable. Because it strips away distraction. It forces you to sit with your own thoughts, your own fears, your own buried longings. But that's exactly where transformation begins. When the universe is preparing you for a new beginning, it often takes you into isolation, not to break you, but to reintroduce you to yourself. In the absence of noise, your authentic voice grows louder. In the absence of validation, your inner worth begins to reveal itself. And in the absence of constant movement, you begin to remember that you are not what you do, who you impress, or how others see you. You are something far deeper, far more ancient. And yet, it's easy to misunderstand this phase. You may think you've been forgotten, that the universe has gone silent, that your prayers have gone unanswered. But this silence is not absence, it is presence. It is the sacred space in which you are being reshaped, not outwardly but inwardly. This is the space where clarity emerges, where you begin to discern between what was yours and what was borrowed, what came from your soul and what came from fear, survival, or the desire to belong. Most people run from this part of the path. They fill the silence with distractions. They rush to reconnect, to fill the space with new relationships, new pursuits, new noise. But if you can resist that urge, if you can lean into the discomfort of aloneness, you will find something extraordinary. You will find your center. Because within loneliness lies a profound opportunity, the chance to reattune your entire being, the chance to rewire the way you relate to the world. When you are no longer chasing connection to escape yourself, your relationships become purer. When you stop needing others to reflect your worth back to you, your self-love deepens. And when you learn to hold yourself through the ache of solitude, you discover the quiet strength that no one can ever take from you. This kind of solitude is sacred. It births insight that no book can give you. It reveals wisdom that only the soul carries. And it connects you to a deeper rhythm, one that doesn't rush, doesn't cling, doesn't beg for validation, but simply is. And in that beingness, in that simplicity, you realize you were never truly alone. You were just being brought back to wholeness. The world teaches us to fear loneliness, to see it as a sign of failure or lack. But on the spiritual path, it is a gateway, a sacred doorway you must walk through if you are to truly remember who you are. And the ones who do, who stay present in that silence, who let the ache soften rather than harden them, emerge with a power that doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to prove. They emerge rooted, steady, clear. If you find yourself in that space right now, isolated, cut off, unsure, don't try to escape it. Sit with it. Ask it what it's here to show you. Because what feels like absence may actually be an invitation to meet the parts of yourself you've forgotten, to tend to the wounds you've ignored, to reclaim the light you've been giving away. This phase won't last forever. Like all seasons, it will pass, but what it gives you, if you let it, is something eternal. A quiet, unwavering connection to your own soul. And from that connection, every fresh start is born. You've probably felt it before. Those strange moments where reality seems to bend, where the ordinary takes on a subtle shimmer, and something deep inside you whispers, "Pay attention." Maybe it's a number you keep seeing everywhere. Maybe it's a name that keeps appearing. Maybe it's a dream that haunts you long after waking. These aren't coincidences. They're not accidents. They are signs. Subtle, precise, and deeply personal messages from the universe guiding you through the shadow. When the universe is preparing you for a fresh start, it rarely announces it with fanfare. It moves quietly, like a river under the surface. It begins by communicating in a language not of words, but of symbols, patterns, and synchronicities. And these signs often arrive when life seems stuck or unraveling, when the path ahead feels hidden and the ground beneath you begins to shift. These moments are not meant to confuse you, they are invitations. Invitations to slow down, to become still, to begin listening not just with your ears, but with your soul. Because when your outer world feels chaotic, the inner world becomes the map, and the universe speaks through that map in ways most have forgotten how to read. But you've felt it, the conversation between you and something greater, the goosebumps for no reason, the song that plays just as you think of someone, the exact phrase you needed to hear showing up in a book you picked up at random. That quiet feeling in your chest that says, "This means something," and it does. The psyche is always in dialogue with the unseen. The more open you become to this conversation, the more clearly you'll see that the world around you is alive with meaning. Every encounter, every pause, every detour, it all carries a thread that connects to something beyond your conscious understanding. But these signs require a different kind of seeing. They don't appear to the eyes clouded by fear or rushing through life without presence. They appear to the ones willing to pay attention, to look again, to feel what's underneath the surface. And when you do, you begin to see how the universe is always orchestrating on your behalf, gently nudging you forward, whispering what your soul already knows, but your mind has forgotten. The signs are often subtle because your readiness determines their clarity. If you're open, they will increase. If you're closed, they will pause. Not out of punishment, but because the universe respects your free will. It will not force you to awaken. It will simply keep offering you reasons to. So many people ask for guidance, but dismiss the very messages they receive. They call them random. They tell themselves it's just chance. But deep down, they feel it. They know when something is different. They know when the same symbol appears over and over. It's not just chance. It's alignment. It's confirmation. It's preparation. Because when you're approaching a new beginning, your old way of navigating life will no longer work. Logic, control, and 5-year plans begin to dissolve. In their place arises intuition, inner knowing, and trust. And signs are how you build that trust. They remind you, even if you can't see the whole picture, you're not walking blindly. You're being led. But to be led, you must be willing to follow something deeper than the surface. You must surrender the need to have every answer now. You must exchange the obsession with certainty for the beauty of discovery. You must learn to see with the eyes of the soul. And that kind of vision is cultivated. It's nurtured. In stillness, in reflection, in moments of wonder. It grows when you stop trying to interpret everything with your mind and instead ask, what is life showing me here? What is this moment trying to reveal? Because the universe is not silent, it's just subtle. And in a world that worships volume, subtlety can feel like silence, but it's not. It's grace. It's wisdom. It's the universe testing your readiness, asking if you'll slow down enough to notice. When you do begin noticing, you'll see that you've never been alone, that even in your darkest nights, there were signs. You just weren't yet ready to see them. And now that you are, everything begins to change. Not because the signs are new, but because you are, and the more you follow them, the more they appear. The more you trust, the more you're shown. You become part of the unfolding, not separate from it. You become a co-creator, not just a bystander. And slowly, you stop needing the full map. You only need the next light on the path. If you are seeing the signs now, if the synchronicities are increasing, if the symbols are calling you, pay attention. You are being spoken to in the language of the soul. The universe is preparing you for something sacred. There comes a point in your journey when the life you've built, the identity you've carried, and the version of yourself you've shown to the world can no longer continue. It doesn't happen all at once, and often not in dramatic fashion, but there's a slow, growing tension within you, a quiet sense that something no longer fits. The clothes of your past self, your beliefs, habits, relationships, ways of coping, start to feel tight, uncomfortable, foreign. And even though part of you wants to hold on, deep down you know you're being asked to shed. The shedding of the old self is not an act of will. It's an act of surrender. It's not about fixing who you are, but releasing who you're not. So much of what we carry was never ours to begin with. We inherited it, we absorbed it, we performed it, because at some point it kept us safe. It helped us belong. It gave us a sense of control. But the soul has no interest in performances. It longs for truth, and truth demands that everything false must fall away. When the universe is preparing you for a fresh start, it doesn't just rearrange your outer life. It begins within. It pulls your attention to the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, the shadow you've denied, the pain you've suppressed, the masks you've worn. And it invites you, not with force, but with precision, to let them go. Not because they were wrong, but because they have served their purpose. But letting go is never easy. We don't just release roles, we release identities. We release dreams that no longer feel alive. We release versions of ourselves that were once celebrated, and in doing so, we often grieve. There is a real, sacred sorrow in the process of transformation, the kind of grief that doesn't come from death, but from evolution. You're not losing your life. You're losing your attachment to who you thought you had to be. There's a temptation, of course, to try and skip this part, to hold on just a little longer, to pretend, to patch, to delay the inevitable. But life won't let you. It keeps nudging, keeps pulling, until resistance becomes too heavy to carry, until pretending becomes exhausting, until you reach that quiet moment of truth where you realize, I can't go back. I'm not that person anymore, and that is the beginning of freedom. Because what follows is not emptiness, but possibility. When you shed the old, you make space for the real. Your choices begin to shift. Your energy recalibrates. You stop seeking approval and start seeking alignment. You stop performing for love and start embodying it. And even though the path ahead may still be unclear, you no longer need it to be defined. Because what matters is no longer what you're chasing, but what you're becoming. It's important to understand that this process doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. You don't need to know exactly who you're becoming to release who you're not. You just need to be honest, gentle, courageous enough to allow the old identity to dissolve without rushing to replace it. That space between shedding and becoming is sacred. Don't rush it. Don't numb it. Sit with it. Because within that space, the new self begins to rise, not with noise, but with quiet clarity. And yes, people may not understand. They may try to pull you back into the version of you they were comfortable with. They may question your path, your pace, your silence. But remember, they are not the ones walking this journey. You are. And your evolution is not a performance for them to applaud. It is a vow you make with your soul. So if you feel like everything familiar is slipping away, if your reflection feels like a stranger, if your past feels like another lifetime, it's okay. You are not broken. You are shedding. And the parts that fall away were never the truth of you. They were the armor, the adaptation, the temporary scaffolding. Necessary, yes, but no longer needed. You are not here to cling to who you were, you are here to remember who you are. Is one of the most difficult realizations on the spiritual path. What you once longed for, what you prayed for, worked toward, dreamed about, no longer fits. Not because it wasn't real, not because it wasn't meaningful, but because you've changed. Your energy has shifted. And now, what once felt like alignment feels heavy. What once inspired you now feels like routine. And without knowing exactly when it happened, you find yourself outgrowing the very things you thought you would never live without. This is the quiet work of transformation. It doesn't always announce itself with grand changes. Sometimes it just shows up as restlessness, a deep sense of being called somewhere else. Even when your life on the surface still looks good, you look around and realize you've reached the places you once yearned for, the relationship, the job, the home, the external milestones. They're all there, and yet something inside you is no longer moved by them. It's as if your soul is whispering, "You asked for this, because it was all you could see at the time, but now you're seeing more." And this is where many people feel guilt. How can you outgrow what you once begged the universe for? How can you walk away from what others would call success, what you once called a dream? But the truth is, growth doesn't apologize for itself. Evolution doesn't check in for permission. When your energy shifts, when your awareness deepens, your needs, values, and desires shift too. And sometimes what once felt expansive begins to feel like confinement. Not because it's wrong, but because you're being asked to expand beyond it. The soul isn't interested in comfort zones. It doesn't settle. It doesn't cling to the familiar for the sake of safety. The soul is always moving, stretching, reaching toward greater expression. So if your inner world is tugging at you, if you feel that undeniable pull away from what once satisfied you, know that something higher is asking to come through. And you can't welcome the new if you're too busy convincing yourself to stay where you no longer belong. This doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It means you're aware, and awareness brings responsibility. The responsibility to honor where you truly are, not where you used to be. The world will often tell you to be content with what you have, to hold on to stability, to avoid making waves. But your soul will keep whispering, and the longer you ignore it, the louder the discomfort becomes. What was once a gentle nudge becomes restlessness. Restlessness becomes disconnection, and eventually the disconnection becomes a kind of soul-deep ache that no success or relationship can soothe. When you outgrow a version of your life, you don't always know what comes next. That's part of the test. You're asked to release the old without yet having full clarity on the new. You're asked to trust the intelligence of your own discomfort. Because that discomfort is not failure, it's feedback. It's the signal that your current reality was meant to be a stepping stone, not a final destination. And here's the paradox. Letting go doesn't mean rejecting the past. It means integrating it. Honoring what it gave you, recognizing that it brought you exactly where you needed to be for the next door to open. But that next door won't appear if you keep pretending the current room is still enough. You can't fake alignment, not with your soul. It knows. It always knows. So if your energy feels misaligned with your outer world, don't panic. Don't shame yourself for it. Don't rush to explain it to others who may not understand. Just listen. Honor the truth emerging within you. Make space for it. And know that even if you don't yet have the answers, the simple act of acknowledging the shift is enough to begin the realignment. You were never meant to stay the same. You're not here to cling to what once fit. You're here to follow the thread of aliveness wherever it leads, even if it leads you away from what once felt like everything. There comes a moment, quietly and without warning, when everything you've been moving through, every breakdown, every pause, every moment of doubt, every season of isolation, begins to make sense. Not in a loud, triumphant way, but in a calm and certain knowing. You were being prepared not for another repeat of the past, but for something entirely new. Not a continuation of what once was, but a complete rebirth. This isn't about getting back on track or returning to how things were before they fell apart. This is about stepping into something your old self couldn't have even imagined. The version of you that started the journey isn't the same one arriving here now. You've been shaped by the fire, softened by the silence, strengthened by the solitude. You've been emptied so that something more aligned could take root. And now, quietly, without needing permission or external validation, the new chapter is ready to begin. You see, a fresh start doesn't begin when your circumstances change. It begins when you do. When you stop trying to go back and instead decide to go forward without dragging the weight of your former self. When you stop asking life to resemble the past and begin trusting the unknown to reveal something more honest. That's when the shift begins. Not out there, but within you. The soul doesn't measure time the way the world does. It doesn't count minutes or milestones. It waits for readiness. And readiness doesn't come from logic. It doesn't come from finishing a checklist or achieving a certain level of success. It comes from alignment. When your inner world and outer world are no longer at war. When your truth is no longer buried beneath layers of compromise, fear, or performance. That is when the universe moves. That is when everything begins to shift. And here's the thing. Nothing needs to look different at first. The signs of a new beginning aren't always visible. Sometimes they arrive as a quiet peace after years of restlessness. A strange clarity where confusion once lived. A new way of responding to the same old triggers. A softness where once there was tension. And from that subtle shift, life begins to move differently. Doors open, people show up, circumstances begin to reflect the inner transformation that's already taken place. You begin to feel it in your body, in the way you breathe deeper, in the way you carry yourself, in the way you no longer chase or beg or prove. Because something in you knows, I am no longer the same. I don't need what I once did. I trust where this is going, even if I don't see it yet. That is the moment of rebirth. That is the true fresh start. It's easy to think the new chapter will come with dramatic external shifts, new job, new home, new relationships, and sometimes it does. But more often, it begins with a simple but powerful internal change, a return to your essence. A remembering of who you were before the world told you who to be. A willingness to let go of striving and instead allow life to move through you. And it doesn't mean everything becomes perfect. It doesn't mean you won't feel fear or doubt. But now, those emotions don't rule you. They visit, but they don't define you. Because underneath them is something stronger, something unshakable, a sense of wholeness that isn't dependent on what happens next. This is the space where you finally begin to live, not just survive, where your choices are made from alignment, not anxiety, where your energy isn't scattered in 1,000 directions but grounded in presence, where you don't chase purpose, you embody it. You wake up knowing you're not here by accident, that your life, your timing, your path, however unconventional, is part of something far greater than you can see. You were never just waiting for life to begin. You were being prepared to meet it in a whole new way. And now, that preparation is complete. The world may look the same, but you are not. And because of that, everything you touch, everything you create, everything you choose from here on will carry the vibration of this new beginning. You are not returning to life, you are rising into it. If you feel the old parts of your life slipping away, trust it's not an ending, it's a sacred beginning. The universe is not punishing you, it's preparing you. And don't run from the stillness. Don't fear the unknown. This is your invitation to rise into the version of yourself you were always meant to become. If this message resonated with your soul, don't just listen. Reflect, breathe, begin again. Subscribe for more soul awakening messages. Watch the next video if you're ready to go even deeper. Your transformation is only just beginning.